The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. Dover Publications, Abridged Edition. Chapter 6, The Examination. Villefort had no sooner left the room than he discarded his jaunty manner, and assumed the grave air of a man called upon to decide upon the life of his fellow man. In reality, however, apart from the line of politics which his father had adopted, and which might influence his future if he did not separate himself altogether from him, Gérard de Villefort was at this moment as happy as it is given to any man to be. Already rich, and although only 27 years of age, occupying a high position on the bench, he was about to marry a young and beautiful girl whom he loved, not passionately, it is true, but with calculation as befits a future procureur du roi. For in addition to her beauty, which was remarkable, Mademoiselle de Saint-Méran, his betrothed, belonged to one of the most influential families of the period, and furthermore had a dowry of 50,000 crowns, besides the prospect of inheriting another 500,000. At the door he met the commissary of police, who was waiting for him. The sight of this man brought him from his seventh heaven down to earth. He composed his face, and advancing toward the officer, said, "Here I am, monsieur. I have read the letter. You are quite right in arresting this man. Now give me all the information you have discovered about him and the conspiracy." "And yet, as we know nothing about the conspiracy, monsieur, all the papers found on the man have been sealed and placed on your desk. You have seen the letter denouncing him, that the prisoner is a certain Edmond Dantès, first mate of the three-master Pharaon, trading in cotton with Alexandria and Smyrna, and belonging to Morel and Son of Marseille. Did he serve in the Navy before he joined the mercantile marine?" "Oh, no, monsieur, he is too young. He's only 19 or 20 at the most." At this moment, just as Villefort had arrived at the corner of the Rue des Concis, a man who seemed to be waiting for him approached. It was Monsieur Morel. "Ah, Monsieur de Villefort," he cried, "I am very fortunate in meeting you. A most extraordinary and unaccountable mistake has been made. The mate of my ship, a certain Edmond Dantès, has just been arrested." "I know," Villefort made answer, "and I am on my way to examine him." "Oh, monsieur," Monsieur Morel continued, carried away by his friendship for the young man, "you do not know the accused, but I do. He is the gentlest and most trustworthy man imaginable, and I don't hesitate to say he is the best seaman in the whole mercantile service. Oh, Monsieur de Villefort, with all my heart, I commend him to your kindly consideration. You may rest assured, monsieur, that you will not have appealed to me in vain if the prisoner is innocent. But if, on the contrary, he is guilty, we live in a difficult age, monsieur, when it would be a fatal thing to be lenient. In that case, I shall be compelled to do my duty." As he had just arrived at his own house beside the law courts, he entered with a lordly air, after having saluted with icy politeness the unhappy shipowner, who stood petrified on the spot where Villefort had left him. The antechamber was full of gendarmes and policemen, and in their midst stood the prisoner, carefully guarded. Villefort crossed the room, threw a glance at Dantès, and after taking a packet of papers from one of the gendarmes, disappeared. His first impression of the young man was favorable, but he had been warned so often against trusting first impulses that he applied the maxim to the term impression, forgetting the difference between the two words. He therefore stifled the feelings of pity that were uppermost in his heart, assumed the expression which he reserved for important occasions, and sat down at his desk with a frown on his brow. "Bring in the prisoner." An instant later, Dantès was before him. Saluting his judge with an easy politeness, he looked round for a seat as if he were in Monsieur Morel's drawing room. "Who are you, and what is your name?" asked Villefort, as he fingered the papers which he had received from the police officer on his entry. "My name is Edmond Dantès," replied the young man calmly. "I am mate of the Pharaon owned by Messieurs Morel and Son." "Your age?" continued Villefort. 19. "What were you doing when you were arrested?" "I was at my betrothal breakfast, monsieur," the young man said, and his voice trembled slightly as he thought of the contrast between those happy moments and the painful ordeal he was now undergoing. "You were at your betrothal feast?" the deputy said, shuddering in spite of himself. "Yes, monsieur. I am about to marry a woman I have loved for 3 years." Villefort, impassive though he usually was struck with this coincidence, and the passionate voice of Dantès, who had been seized in the midst of his happiness, touched a sympathetic chord in his own heart. He also was about to be married. He also was happy, and his happiness had been interrupted in order that he might kill the happiness of another. "Now I want all the information in your possession," he said. "Have you served under the usurper?" "I was about to be drafted into the Marines when he fell." I've been told you have extreme political views, said V4, who had never been told anything of the kind, but was not sorry to put forward the statement in the form of an accusation. Extreme political views, monsieur? Alas, I'm almost ashamed to say it, but I have never had what one calls a view. I'm barely 19 years of age, as I have already had the honor to tell you. I know nothing, for I am not destined to play any great role in life. The little I am and ever shall be, if I am given the position I desire, I owe to Monsieur Morel. My opinions, I do not say political, but private, are limited to these 3 sentiments. I love my father, I respect Monsieur Morel, and I adore Mercedes. That, monsieur, is all I have to tell you. You see for yourself that it is not very interesting. As Dantes spoke, V4 looked at his genial and frank countenance, and with his experience of crime and criminals, he recognized that every word Dantes spoke convinced him of his innocence. In spite of V4's severity, Edmond had not once expressed in his looks, his words, or his gestures anything but kindness and respect for his interrogator. This is indeed a charming young man, V4 said to himself, but aloud he said, Have you any enemies? Enemies, monsieur? My position is happily not important enough to make me any enemies. As regards my character, I am perhaps too hasty, but I always try to curb my temper in my dealings with my subordinates. I have 10 or 12 sailors under me. If you ask them, monsieur, you will find that they love and respect me, not as a father, for I am too young, but as an elder brother. Perhaps you have no enemies, but you may have aroused feelings of jealousy. At the early age of 19, you're about to receive a captaincy. You're going to marry a beautiful girl who loves you. These 2 pieces of good fortune may have been the cause of envy. You are right. No doubt you understand men better than I do, and possibly it is so. But if any of my friends cherish any such envious feelings towards me, I would rather not know, lest my friendship should turn to hatred. You are wrong. You should always strive to see clearly around you, and indeed you seem such a worthy young man that I am going to depart from the ordinary rule by showing you the denunciation which was brought you before me. Here is the paper. Do you recognize the writing? So saying, V4 took the letter from his pocket and handed it to Dantes. Dantes looked at it and read it. His brow darkened as he said, No, monsieur, I do not know this writing. It is disguised, and yet it is very plainly written. At any rate, it is a clever hand that wrote it. I'm very lucky, he continued, looking at V4 with an expression of gratitude, in having you to examine me, for there can be no doubt that this envious person is indeed my enemy. And the light that shone in the young man's eyes as he said this revealed to V4 how much energy and deep feeling lay concealed beneath his apparent gentleness. Very well, then, said the deputy. Answer me quite frankly, not as a prisoner before his judge, but as a man in a false position to another man who has his interest at heart. What truth is there in this anonymous accusation? It is partly true and partly false, monsieur. Here is the plain truth. I swear it by my honor as a sailor, by my love for Mercedes, and by my father's life. When we left Naples, Captain Leclerc fell ill of a brain fever, as we had no doctor on board, and as he would not put in at any port, since he was very anxious to reach Elba. He became so very ill that towards the end of the 3rd day, feeling that he was dying, he called me to him. My dear Dantes, he said, swear to me on your honor that you will do what I bid you, for it is a matter of the utmost importance. I swear it, Captain, I said. After my death, the command of the ship devolves upon you as mate. Take command, head for the Isle of Elba, go ashore at Porto Ferrajo, ask for the Maréchal, and give him this letter. You may be given another letter and be entrusted with a mission. That mission was to have been mine, Dantes, but you will carry it out in my stead and get all